The race, my friends, for the top four is hotting up. Welcome back to Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys, and that is why I also have one of these charts ready for you. Because look, if we just zoom in, right? That's your Premier League table. Enhance. That's probably the race for the top four. Enhance. This is probably the race for the top four. That's why I did the, see what, yeah. Fireworks. I mean, fireworks all around me, surely. Because zoom out, right? This, my friends, is really the race for the top four. And I'm about to break down using this very chart, especially if I scale to fit all of this breakdown. Most of this is going to be vibes. Some of this is going to be real analysis. But you guys decide what. If you have any input at any point on whether you think I've got something wrong or right, let me know. And really, I'm just trying to have a conversation around who is already cemented in the top four, who is in a race for the top four, and whether there is even an open gate there for anyone to get through. Manchester United, of course, find themselves in third. You remember the finish to the season last season, but Manchester United didn't find themselves in any particularly strong position. They're in a much stronger position. They've kind of earned where they are right now in the Premier League table. 2 points, only 2 points ahead of Tottenham. But if you look down in fifth place, they're 6 points ahead of Newcastle, who played one game less than them, and they are 8 points ahead of Liverpool, who have played the exact same number of games. So really, you could describe them as slightly out of this. But their finish to last season, which is what I'm kind of going on, wasn't great. All right? I'm just saying. But different manager, different times, pre-Casemiro. Oh, but Casemiro also has a red card. And so we will talk about that. We'll talk about all the form of all the teams later. I just want to go through who is actually in the race, who isn't really in the race, and why. Manchester United missing out on Casemiro for 4 games, big deal. But Manchester United under Erik ten Hag missing out on 1 player. Can they make it through? Most likely so. So let's put them above Spurs for now, right? Spurs currently find themselves in 4th place at time of recording. And when they finished last season under Conte, I saw the first game under Conte against the Dutch side in the Europa League. It began with an A, I think. No, it wasn't Heron. Anyway, this was their finish to last season. Absolutely thundering into the top 4. And look at that there. They never really 4-5, 4-5, 4-5, 4-5. They were going back and forth with the likes of Arsenal. And, well, frankly, the likes of Arsenal have since supercharged themselves, since super boosted, and Spurs have been left in a similar position. So, arguably, maybe this Spurs doesn't exist anymore. Mainly because Conte's probably on his way out. We're probably going to see a new manager come in. Not yet, but not until the end of the season. And frankly, Spurs have stayed very much static, whilst also securing themselves in sort of this kind of area for at least a couple of seasons in a row. And you know what? That's got to be respected. But immediately behind them are one of the teams who've moved up and moved down. And the last time that this team moved up, or indeed down, was about 20 years ago now. I went back and looked through the seasons, and we all know, I've got a big Geordie friend who probably has an idea much better than I do as to where his team will finish. But the 03-04 season was arguably the last time that they did that. So 19 years ago at this point. This was under Bobby Robson at the time. I think it might have been Bobby's last season because he left in 2004. These guys narrowly, I mean, not even narrowly, but they did miss out on the top 4, but it was narrow. But you know, you can kind of see here, going into the last few games, they were playing Marseille in the Europa League at the time, the UEFA Cup then, and then the final few games of the season, they'd clearly been pushed out and got edged into the top 4, and that really was what sealed them dropping out of that status. Arguably now, they're doing the reverse of that, right? Although Eddie Howe is very much not the reverse of Bobby Robson, and Bobby Robson is uneditable in history, so, you know. But the point is, realistically, this was actually the last time. I think this was the 02-03 season. And even within that run, by the way, which I kind of wanted to talk about, they got absolutely thrashed by Manchester United. They also lost to Fulham, who were obviously not as good a team at the time. Everton, who were also a better team at that time, though not as good as this Newcastle side. And then they also got easy wins against the likes of Blackburn, but then the rest of them were actually quite hard fought. However, it was still a tight race. And you can see, look, I mean, really there, I think Newcastle dropped rather than stayed the same, but here we are. And you can see, weirdly, not even weirdly, like very consistently, the home games, 52,000 people, 20 years ago. This is why Newcastle are becoming resurgent. This was that team in that time, right? You got Shearer as the captain, Bellamy's up there as well, Amiobi starting games, Dyer and Genius in midfield, which tells you everything you need to know. This is the difference between then and now. Look at that, Woodgate. These like Champions League level players. Do you realise what Jonathan Woodgate was? Do you realise how good Jonathan Woodgate was back in the day? He was playing next to Titus Bramble. Shay Given there as well. And I think Olivier Bernard. Is it Olivier Bernard? Yeah. Anyway, the point is, it's very much a resurgent version of Newcastle at this point. But they dropped out of the top four. It seemed a lot more of a sure thing back, well, not even a sure thing. Maybe they were overachieving for quite some time. And it felt as if they needed to just keep sprinting as fast as they can before maybe the team fell flat on their face, or possibly the side went a little bit sideways and some draws kind of crept in. That's kind of my point here is, Newcastle fans have got this history of being this kind of team where there is a 6-2 in there of Manchester United. They're a buoyant side. They're a buoyant fan base. They're a fan base that's probably grateful to be there. They're ahead of where they are right now. And they're also ahead of Liverpool. So I then went back and looked at Liverpool. You remember the recent Liverpool results. Liverpool currently find themselves 6th in the table. But you remember that season, the 2021 season, where Liverpool were just so far off the pace. The amount of injuries, the rejigging they constantly had to do in midfield, but also just the poor form of a couple of players within the side. And really, the poor positional, but also just unit play. Like, now it's much more about how you deploy players in individual roles and then how they interact. Whereas even then it was the same, but you get what I mean? Like, the unit of the midfield was poor, but they finished the season very, very strong. I think it was something like 10 wins in however many games, in 15 games or something like that. Anyway, they got a lot of very good and decent results. And you can see right up until the very end of the season, it was 6th, 5th, 4th. Just having Liverpool breathing down your neck, which is what Newcastle are feeling, what Spurs are feeling, is a consistent feeling. However, the difference between Liverpool then and Liverpool now, they had Gini Wijnaldum and they captained him the last couple of games of the season. So don't tell me that this is the same side, because it ain't. There's a younger crop coming through, and sure, maybe that's a good thing. But the point here is, look at that. Gini captained these last few games. You forget how good that midfield was. Fabinho, Gini Wijnaldum, Thiago. Very different Liverpool back then. A Liverpool, arguably, in transition. Need I remind you that Liverpool also got knocked out by Real Madrid that season? Or would they if it happened again? Cold. I mean, realistically, that's your argument for the top four. But I kind of felt like there were some other fan bases out there, right? Who were like, hey, include us. So I was like, hey, why not? Brighton down here. Brighton, arguably in recent years, have been climbing and climbing and climbing. That was under Potter. But then you've also got, look at this, 15th, 17th, 15th, 16th, 9th. So the quality of the side, the quality of the coaching has been slowly improving. And look at where they find themselves. On the cusp of European football at this point. Not quite a Champions League level squad, and probably a team that might get picked over at some point, but a World Cup winner in there. Someone else they've just recently upgraded his contract and was very much wanted and coveted by other Premier League sides. They've had Trossard already picked off, and yet here they find themselves. Look at that. De Zerbi, actually, I went to look back at, is De Zerbi one of these managers who's in other countries that we just overlooked in recent years? We haven't really overlooked him, but he did win something with Shakhtar Donetsk, or at least get them onto a winning form. He did win something in, I think, some sort of Super Cup in Ukraine, and he did win a Super Cup of sorts in like Serie B or C somewhere in Italy. So this guy's been grinding for time. And you can obviously see here, it was Sassuolo, who was very consistently like 8th, 11th, 7th at the moment with Brighton, but first with Shakhtar when he was forced to leave them. He won Serie C, but that's a very different kind of thing. What I'm saying is that there's not exactly a track record there of him being, this incredible manager, but very watchable football. And if you look at them since the new year, since the new year, look at that. Look at that. Points 80, ahead of Liverpool, ahead of Fulham, just behind the likes of Tottenham, behind the likes of Brentford, who we'll talk about in a second. So these teams are dangerous sides within there, and that's probably worth us sort of discussing here. The Premier League table, especially once you've cut away from really that top two, much more of a mix in there, and much more worth taking a look at that. But, the De Zerbi factor is a big one here, is what I'm saying, and managers play a huge factor in there. Which is why I wanted to look at then also Fulham. You remember Fulham's highest ever finish in the Premier League? They finished 7th. arguably quite a distance away from Arsenal. In fact, they were 19 points off Arsenal. I think it is 53 plus. Yeah, 19 points off Arsenal. So that was under Roy Hodgson. They then found themselves in the Europa League next season. And, you know, we all know the history from there. Clint Dempsey, blah, blah, blah. England. How we got that job, I don't know, but here we are. Fulham, still a difficult side to face, despite the fact that Arsenal absolutely killed them the other day. Fulham with a couple of injuries in recent weeks, but also just stuttering a little bit, to be honest, at this point. Didn't really turn up for the game, looked quite tired. I think Fulham will improve. I don't think they're going to make top four. Is that such a shocking thing to say? No, but I should secure my share, because it was going, look, that's just too far, isn't it? It's just too far. Who sits like this? Who sits like this? Someone who's taking a sip of coffee, that's who. Next on the table, Brentford. Still ahead of Chelsea though, my friends. Brentford have been incrementally improving. You can see here, look at that. Green in the Championship, below there, they were in League 1. Before that, they would have obviously been in even lower leagues. Yeah, like they were in the 4th tier just over a decade ago. So let's give them the credit that they deserve. And this chart arguably is a big word in this video, does not provide the context that really they should be weighted for the charts, but here they find themselves. Brentford not getting top 4, probably not getting European football this season, but they find themselves 4 points off Liverpool, which is why I have to pay them that level of respect. But it also is also why I also have to face and look at the fact that Chelsea may still be being resurgent this season. Zoom out of the Brentford factor, zoom into the Chelsea factor. Look at where they finished last season, 3rd in the table. 21-22 season under Thomas Tuchel, massively improving. I thought that was pretty good. The 21-22 season, where they also got knocked out by Real Madrid, didn't obviously finish well for the Champions League, but the previous season did finish well. And, you know, we all know who they won against in that season. The point is, Chelsea now find themselves going through in the Champions League, into the quarterfinals. Things can improve. Kovacic, I think it was, that big comment on the weekend saying, we know we are Chelsea. We are a side who should be playing better than we are, who probably are a better team. And you could say that Graham Potter is turning things around. More recently, their form table has looked a little bit better. More on that in a second. Look at this over here, right? This was their big finish last season. When they finished, they're 3rd in the table. Previous season, 4th. So Chelsea are very good at doing this kind of couple of seasons on. They have this terrible season and then they rocket back up, right? Now, arguably, that was under Roman Abramovich, and you could say that that's a very different era. They're still trying to patch over some of the issues that were left by him. He's also, some people are still saying he's still involved in elements of the club, which I would be very surprised if he was, but maybe it's hard to extract yourself from the team, extrude yourself from the side. There's a word in there, you know what I'm going for though. To extricate. Thank you. To extricate yourself from the Chelsea team. You try being a dad of 2 kids. Right. So end of 2021, you see they win the Champions League final against Man City. They didn't finish on all that different a points total, only 7 points different in points. So getting into the top 4 was a much lower total that season. This season, we're probably looking at a total of, also maybe a lower total this season, but we're looking like, I'd say mid to high 60s to get into this, right? If not 70 points to get into the top 4, which would make it one of the harder top 4s to get into in recent years, although obviously last season it took 70 points. So you're looking at roughly 70 points. How far off 70 points are Liverpool going into their final 12 games? They're 28 points off, which would mean that they would need to win 10 of their last 12 games even just to get to 72 points. Likely? We'll look at it in a second. And then finally, I just wanted to pay some respect to Aston Villa. Aston Villa in recent years, again, have dropped down, right? They've dropped down out of even the top 4, but out of the league. I mean, just look at that. So they were up very high in the Championship, but spent a couple of seasons there, didn't make it back up immediately, and so here we find ourselves. But pay some respect to this side, because A, they are a representation in Europe of biblical proportions. We remember their big history in Europe. But look at the Premier League finishes here. Look at that. This was, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because this is quite key. Martin O'Neill, everyone forgets that Martin O'Neill era. Gabby Agbonlahor, Young, Milner, Barry, Carew. It shows you how quickly you can build up a team, how quickly you can put that back together. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Villa get top 4 this season, although, again, I had to pay them respect because of the respect paid to other sides. But what I'm saying is they're a long-term project under a manager who, well, oh, sorry, my bad. A manager who he's not famous for making it into the Champions League in recent years. In fact, he's very famous for doing the opposite of that and getting into the Europa League. But 7th with Villarreal made them very consistent. Not actually a great points total there. Valencia, not actually, weirdly, a almost similar points total when he was finishing 3rd in La Liga. So we're looking at a man, he was finishing 3rd in La Liga about a decade ago, by the way, so this is a very different time in football. But still, there is a showing there that, you know, this guy has got some level of success in him. There is also some doubts as to whether there is some level of success in him because, well, he didn't manage to win Liga in the 16-17 season. He actually finished 2nd. That is a serially underachieving side, even though they were beaten by a side who was up and coming anyway. But the point is, he does improve teams. But there is also this level of kind of, you know, is he smashing the glass ceiling? By no means. So that's what I'm saying. I think the Valencia years sort of earned him quite a reputation. The Sevilla years made him more solid. Will we see a time when Unai Emery is taking Aston Villa into the top 4? Not in the next 2 or 3 seasons. Not even the next 4 seasons. Not in the next 5 seasons. Do you know why? Probably nothing to do with him. Probably to do with the spending of the other teams. But I'd love to see it because I grew up in the Midlands, you know? Not near Birmingham. Well, near enough to get to the Bull Ring. But you get what I mean. Anyway, we take it all the way through here. We looked at all the former years of Chelsea, and then I attached this form table, showing, by the way, how Chelsea have had poor form in recent games, but then improved on their form more recently and have 2 wins in a row. Also, 3 wins in a row if you include the Champions League form, but that's very different. Champions League could possibly spur them on depending on how the draw goes. They're already through. Job done. What is this monumental? You can't hear that probably, but there is something massive moving in the building. Final thing I wanted to do was chart this, right? We could just be vibes here, right, guys? The vibes at Chelsea are improving. They are changing. They are a side getting more positive. And so I've kind of attached them to this Liverpool and Newcastle and Spurs set that I've put together. These final games of the season here, Chelsea play Liverpool, Aston Villa themselves, but Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Man City, and Newcastle. Really difficult final run in here. And I don't think any of the sides got an easy final run in. I'd love to know who you think has got that run in that suits them to sort of go on, push on and win the league or win the top 4. I think this puts it beyond Chelsea. They have to make up too many points. They have to do too much against too many of these sides. And arguably there are maybe just 1 or 2 results in there that will just... It's not about that you, at the end of the season, they were only 6 points off, or, they're only 9 points off, or whatever. Or 4 points. At the time when you are set back and you know you have 5 games left or whatever it is, that can work against the side. And I would say it's going to work against Chelsea going into this. A, because they probably know it's beyond them at this point. There are too many other sides in the mix, although they are definitely improving. I also think a couple of the players know this isn't really my side. This isn't really my man. I'm going to be moving on next season. It doesn't really matter what happens here. So I think it's beyond Chelsea. I think it's beyond them, Chelsea. I think it's beyond them. All right? Just saying. But I think they're resurgent. Where did they finish? Probably 7th. Liverpool, also tricky run-in, right? You've got Man City, Chelsea, that's the other one, Arsenal, Brentford's in there, Spurs are in there. If you need to win 10 of these last 12 games, even like 10 games here, I think, and even Fulham there, I mean, look at that, that's been postponed and that one's at home. Even looking at that, this possibly puts it beyond Liverpool. I don't know if you agree. Maybe early on here, I mean, look at that. That run, even though it's a postponed Chelsea game, is a nasty little run for Liverpool. Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal. Oof. 3 in a row on the back of a Fulham game, and Liverpool have just lost to Bournemouth. they're a good team who are improving, right? I mean, saying they're a good team is probably even a bit beyond them, but they're a side that is improving. I can see where they're going. Is this season becoming a bit of a write-off for Liverpool? Let me know in the comments below. Newcastle, on the other hand, I think that's a great run for Newcastle. You've got Man United, but then you've also got the likes of West Ham, Brentford, Aston Villa, Spurs. I think Newcastle could probably do something against them. Everton, Southampton, Arsenal lead. The least number of tricky games with no European football, no demoralising Real Madrid second legs, no demoralising losses to whoever it is that Chelsea are going to lose out on the Champions League to. Decent little run there for Newcastle, just worth acknowledging. And look up, right? We'll look at the Manchester United one very, very quickly, but I think Manchester United will be all right. Look at that. Too many easy games, too many simple, straightforward games there for them. The games that Casemiro will probably miss, games like Newcastle, oof, that isn't great. And the likes of Brentford as well, but is postponed. But you get what I'm saying. It's not great, but I think they'll have enough come the end of the season because it's this little tasty run of games here in the middle where you sort of go, they'll just stack up the points. Don't worry about it, right? And they will. It's just inevitable. Manchester United again, and they will. Spurs, Newcastle, Manchester United, Liverpool. I can see them slipping up against like a Brighton or someone like that. I just see some slip-ups for Spurs here. I know there are going to be days where they beat your Bournemouths, they beat your Palaces and your Villas. When it comes to crunch time, Conte is good. But I just think that the momentum will fall away. And weirdly, just weirdly, I think we might be backing a Newcastle team to be resurgent and into the top four here. Look at that run of games. I'm just saying, in order for Liverpool to get that 70-point mark, because if we go back over here, through all my amazing charts, back to the Premier League table, look, Newcastle, 16 points off 60 points at the moment. That also puts them 26 points off 70. Last 13 games? Especially considering that the draws are maybe letting them down there, but not many losses in there. They're a difficult side to beat. Whereas for Spurs and Liverpool, it seems much more Liverpool seem a bit more even, but for Spurs, it's either win or lose, because they seem to go for a lot of games. Liverpool, arguably they could turn the form table around, but they are the third best form team in the table at the moment. I'd love to say I could make an argument for Liverpool finishing in the top four, but the midfield is just not consistent enough. And that lack of drive, when Liverpool miss something that they'd be able to push in on, I think it's not that I don't believe in them, it's that I think there are other sides who also now have belief. And that is what makes it very difficult, because with not winning that game against Bournemouth, Liverpool have kind of handed this off to other teams and given it and put it in their hands. Let me know what you guys think. I'd be interested to know. Hey, not the same sort of, controversial views that I normally put into a video. I'm a very controversial character, you know me. I won't get to whatever the BBC at the top. But, all the Conservatives. But it's always nice to chat. I hope you guys have a good day. I hope you're enjoying the channel. If you're new around here, hit subscribe. If you're not, just enjoy it. Please, let me know in the comments below. I think Newcastle will get this. I'll see you guys in a little while. Much love.